welcome to the Veterinary Marketing Podcast, where it's all about helping your veterinary practice attract, engage, and retain clients. Broadcasting a new podcast every Monday from sunny Southern California, here's your host, Brandon Bashirs.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to episode number 104 of the Veterinary Marketing Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. I hope you're having a fantastic day. 104 consecutive episodes every week down in the bag. This is very exciting. 104 divided by 52 equals 2. It's the second birthday of the Veterinary Marketing Podcast. So thank you, everybody who's listened. Thank you so much for listening. I really, really appreciate it. I hope that it provides value to you. And listen, if there's anything that I can do that you think that I can do to improve the podcast, is if you want to hear different kind of topics, if you want more information on some topics, less information on others, please let me know. I always love feedback. I love hearing from listeners. So all of you lurkers out there who've not ever sent me a message, or you have questions and you just don't think about sending a message, send me a message. I love hearing from you. I love helping out. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Just want to mention a couple of things before we begin. Well, actually, first, let's talk about who's going to be on the podcast today. We have a very special guest, Dr. Sue, the cancer vet, Dr. Sue Ettinger, on the podcast today. And I was really excited about this podcast because she is a cancer vet. And that is one specialty that is very, very niche. And so something that I really respect about this is that it's a difficult niche. She's having to convince people, basically. People don't even know that there's cancer treatments for pets, I think, on a large scale. If you're a general practice and you're having trouble getting people to come in for routine care that's just basics, imagine how much more difficult it would be to get people to come in for cancer treatments. So she's doing some really cool things with respect to just a bunch of stuff, and it's a very exciting episode. I was very interested in talking with her. She's very, very knowledgeable and has a lot of great insight. So I love this episode. I hope that you will too. Before we begin though, be sure to subscribe on iTunes. And if you could do me a huge favor, please leave me an honest review. I would really, really appreciate it. 2 years old, I think we only have 16 reviews. I know that there's lots of you listening. So if you could do me a huge favor on our second birthday of the Veterinary Marketing Podcast, please leave me an honest review. I would really, really appreciate it. Also, be sure to check out the newsletter. You can head on over to veterinarymarketingpodcast.com, sign up for the newsletter there. You'll also get a copy of my 31 veterinary marketing blog post ideas. And there you'll get all of the ideas that you'd ever need to create content. It's more not just topics, but types of posts and things that you can do to create new blog posts. So it's a very helpful tool for you. Also, be sure to connect on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat, wherever you like to connect, be sure to connect there. I'd also like to mention this episode is being sponsored by snoutschool.com. Do you ever feel like you're wasting time with your veterinary hospital's social media efforts? Well, veterinary practice manager Danielle Lampert has put together a list of 5 awesome social media tools that every hospital needs to succeed. Danielle is dedicated to teaching veterinary hospitals to use social media via her website, snoutschool.com. So go to snoutschool.com/Brandon to get her list of 5 must-have social media tools now. You'll learn how to create professional-looking social media graphics, you'll save time by scheduling posts, and you'll find out where clients are spending time online. Not only that, she's got great tips for getting your whole veterinary team to understand the importance of social media. So head on over to snoutschool.com/Brandon to get the 5 must-have social media tools for your practice today. That's snoutschool.com/BRANDON. And just real quick here too, I think Danielle is actually running a special, not a special, but her Facebook Essentials course is out, and it is a great course. So if you're not a member of the veterinary social media community, search for the Snout School community on Facebook. It's a Facebook group. Tons of great engagement that she's created there. A wonderful community that she manages and has created that you can get all your questions answered there as well, but she posted a link there for her social media essentials courses. So that's a great course. All right, so let's get into today's episode. We have Dr. Sue Ettinger. We talk about a ton of stuff, how she decided to create a personal brand, what she's learned in creating a personal brand, how she specifically markets herself with a lot of very specialty, tools and all kinds of great stuff. So I think that it's going to be very beneficial for anybody. If you're a specialty practice, you're looking for more business, or if you're general practice looking to partner with specialty practices, there's a lot of good insight in here for sure. One thing that we talk about, about halfway through the interview, she mentions that somebody is managing her social media. She didn't want to name drop without getting permission first, but I knew the person who was managing her social media is Dr. Caitlin DeWild, pardon me. And so if you were wondering who is managing Dr. Sue's social, it's Dr. Caitlin DeWild, and you can search for her at on Facebook at The Social DVM. I've had her on the podcast too, I think episode 64, 65. So check her out as well. So without further ado, here's Dr. Sue, the cancer vet. All right, so on today's podcast, we have Dr. Sue, the cancer vet, Dr. Sue Ettinger. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really, really appreciate it.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into veterinary medicine and what you currently do?
Well, in terms of veterinary medicine, I wanted to be a vet probably since I was a kid. My parents liked to tell me about the picture I did in kindergarten where it was, what do you want to be when you grow up, and you want to be a vet. I did not know I wanted to be a cancer specialist till a little bit late in my career. Actually, when I was in vet school, I thought I wanted to be a surgeon. I'm laughing just because if you know how I feel about surgery right now, you would be like, really? You wanted to be a surgeon? But I don't really like blood. I don't like cutting, and I don't, it's the surgery is not where my heart is. I figured out that I wanted to be a cancer specialist, or first thought about it during my internship as I was applying for surgery residencies, which was a little bit of an awkward time to make that realization. I thought I would do surgical oncology. Not matching for my surgery residency during my internship was one of the hardest days of my career because it was one of the first major failures that I had as a professional. But looking back, I'm so grateful for that failure. I'm so glad somebody saw in me, not that I shouldn't be a surgeon, and then it allowed me to sort of change career paths. It took a couple of years to convince the veterinary community that I wanted to be an oncologist. But I knew that's where my heart was, and now I just can't imagine doing anything else except for treating cancer in dogs and cats.
Well, very cool. So you have your page, which is Dr. Sue Cancer Vet on Facebook, which has almost 30,000 people like that. That's very impressive, very cool. And then you have also your book, and then also a few other communities with your movement that you're kind of trying to create. And we were talking a little bit about this before we started the show, but I hadn't seen any other cancer vets in the veterinary industry at all. And so I'm super interested to get into this with you, but I think it's pretty amazing that there's not really anybody standing out in the industry and kind of being a voice to educate people on this. So being that you're kind of making your own path and going to the frontier of educating people, making people aware, what has been the most difficult thing in introducing this idea into the marketplace, so to speak, where people, when I think about, like, for example, friends that have had pets that have cancer, the answer to that is, well, we're going to make it as comfortable as possible, and then euthanasia is the option for that, which is, it seems like...
Yeah, so I agree. I mean, there are so many myths and misconceptions about treating dogs and cats with cancer. And so, a little of this happened, I'll be honest, by accident. And again, sometimes just the events that happen in our life, that we're not planning for can really change our career. But I, 5 years ago, co-authored a book with a veterinary classmate of mine that I bumped into at one of my cancer conferences. Damian Dressler, we went to vet school together, and he had written a book, and it was more like a workbook, but it was called the Dog Cancer Survival Guide. And he was at the cancer meeting kind of getting more info for his next edition. And I said to him, you really need to have a cancer specialist write this book with you or help you with it, because, if you're going to be talking to pet owners about cancer, it would be nice to have the perspective of a cancer specialist. And he said, well, why don't you write the next one with me? And I literally laughed. I was like, I had 2 young kids at the time, but I think within a week or 2 I had decided to do it. And so I co-wrote the book, and my goal was just to add the point of view of a cancer specialist to this book as a resource for pet owners. And I loved that the book also gave a lot of emotional resources and a lot of the things that we don't have time as clinicians in the appointment calls to do. And then the book came out, and I really just started to own it and love it and everything about it. And I found that I think I have a good voice with pet owners. And I found myself getting more and more excited to talk to owners about the myths and misconceptions about treating pets and cancer. People think it's a death sentence. They think there are no options. They think you're, quote unquote, torturing pets when you treat them with chemotherapy, when, in actuality, 80% of dogs and cats have minimal to no side effects as they're going through chemo. So again, by deciding to write this book, it all started this path where I found that I love to talk to pet owners about cancer, and I love to answer questions. And then a couple of years ago, I joined forces with Tracy Hotchner, and we do, a podcast where we answer pet owner questions about cancer. So everything just sort of, has been evolving, but I can't say I sat down one day and thought that, I'm going to start a Facebook page and I'm going to write a book and I'm going to start raising cancer awareness. It all just sort of developed out of deciding to co-write this book with Damien a couple of years ago. So it's been a really fun journey. But again, a lot of it's been trial and error, just seeing what works, what resonates, and then finding that I have this passion that I, to do cancer outreach that I didn't really know that I loved.
Definitely. So I think a lot of pet owners just aren't educated to what is available and what is possible. And so obviously in marketing, you can fulfill a need that's already in the marketplace, or if people don't know that they have the need, you have to educate them so that they do understand that this is a possibility. With that kind of a mentality, what has been some of the best tools for reaching out to pet owners and communicating with them that you've seen that have been most effective in educating and engaging people? Not just, because there's so many people that put out information, but it's boring oftentimes. What has been best for you?
For me, so I blogged for a couple of years through the Dog Cancer Blog, which was a page associated with the Dog Cancer Survival Guide, the book. And that was fun. And, I got to write blogs about different topics. And I did that for a couple of years. But then I was also doing Facebook, and I've tried some other social media platforms. For me, I personally love Facebook the best because I try to post a daily story about a case that I saw in the clinic. Sometimes I'm giving an update on how they're doing or showing how well they're doing, through treatment. I do also share, failures, cases, not failures, but, cases that succumb to their cancers or that we have to say goodbye to and things like that. So I try to be a very realistic page, but just an upbeat, refreshing page. And I, just in looking at the different people that engage on that page, most of them turn out to be pet owners. There's a good number of veterinarians and other veterinary professionals, but you can tell how excited people are to find a place where they can learn about other patients that are being treated and share their stories or ask questions and things like that. So for me, Facebook has been the most engaging thing that I've done to interact with pet owners. The radio show has been great as well, but again, I think for me, Facebook has been a really good platform for what I'm trying to do, which is raise cancer awareness that, one, we can find it earlier, and two, that it can be treatable if that's right for the family.
Definitely. So have you found that, because I've seen on your page that there are some sad ones for sure, posts, it's not always happy. Mm-hmm. Have you found that, I know some people might be a little bit afraid of sharing, so to speak, negative news. What has been kind of the reaction to that? I mean, it's realistic and authentic because that's the way life is. But have you found that it was difficult when you first started that? Were you nervous to start sharing those kind of things, or how was that received in your marketing?
I think, I feel okay with the saying goodbye to patients. A lot of the patients that I share, I've been taking care of, some of them for months and some of them literally for years. And I develop really close relationships with the clients. And it's also fun to see the pet owners through good times and bad times, say, that's my baby, or thank you so much for everything that you've done throughout, Bruno's care or something, but it is, I do get you're like, oh, when cancer comes back, it's devastating. But I've gotten more comfortable with it because I just think, cancer sucks, in a lot of ways. Not that cancer is not treatable, but it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to say goodbye, but I think it's also, it's cathartic for me and for other owners, to kind of just share everybody else's journey and feel like we're part of a community that we can lean on each other. So I've tried to just share what comes to mind, and I don't, to be honest, I don't think too much about the post. I just write what comes to mind. And if you've done social media, sometimes you can give a good post and it flops, and sometimes I just put something out there and it really resonates with people. And so I just try to share what's on my mind and see, how people react to it. But it's fun. And I mean fun in the sense that I feel like we have a really good community that you probably can't find anywhere else.
Definitely. And so I know that a lot of practices, when they post things, people might not know specifically if something is necessary or required. And I know that out there, a lot of times vets are kind of being hit with a thing that's, like, oh, you guys are just trying to collect more revenue from us. We don't really need the vaccines, or we don't really need this treatment. You guys are just trying to collect money, which is, I've not met a vet yet who is in the money grabbing business. That's not the industry that you guys
exactly.
But have you had any of that kind of response at all, or anybody that's kind of talks like that, or
No.
have you been pretty positive and kind of just out in front of that whole process there? Because I'm sure people think that cancer treatment's like prohibitively expensive just because it relates to, human medicine is the only comparison that we have from a
yeah, I think that it is, frustrating for me and for a pet owner when they want to treat, but the costs are prohibitive. So sometimes I'll get messages for somebody asking, I can't afford treatment. Do you have any other, ideas? So I think it is, and that's something I try to do in the clinic, is present a full spectrum of options. And everybody can't do, like for lymphoma, maybe multi-agent chemotherapy, whether it's cost or scheduling or things like that. So, it's our job as veterinarians to prevent all those options. So on my page, I definitely be like, look how this dog, the owners elected this. It's, not quote unquote the best protocol, but look how the dog is doing and things like that. So I do try to remind people that there are lots of different options. Not specifically on the Facebook page, but sometimes if I've done blogs or guest blogs, or sometimes you'll see an article in the New York Times. One of my clients wrote an article about his pet's treatment that was featured in like the well section of the New York Times, and that set off like a huge debate about you shouldn't be treating dogs, you should be helping, children in underdeveloped countries, and, it got to this whole ethical debate about whether a person has a right to treat their own pet with cancer, whether they should be doing something else. And so those, can be really touchy debates. I try to kind of, I try not to get involved in those debates because that's not really my focus. Mm-hmm. But you can see that come up. But to answer your question, I haven't had much pushback on, the cost of the treatment. I'm just trying to share what people do and present the different options out there.
That's very cool. So with your practice, do you do just oncology at your practice? Or are you general practice as well?
No, so we're a specialty-only practice. I changed practices a little under a year ago. I used to be I'm at another specialty clinic. The clinic that I was at for the last 7 years was a huge, with neurologists, internal medicine, surgeons, radiation oncology, dermatology, critical care. Now I'm at a smaller specialty clinic, and it's me, an internist, a surgeon, or a part-time surgeon, and 24-hour emergency care. So it's still a specialty-only clinic, but it's a smaller feel, which I have to say I really, really like. It's different than what I was doing, but yes, to answer your question, specialty only in emergency.
Well, that's very cool. So for practices that maybe don't have the resources to do oncology at their practice, how would you say the best way for them to find a practice to build a relationship with, maybe to get referrals and also to give referrals to? What do you think the best way to do that is?
The hard part, and the hard part with cancer as a specialty is that there's now just under 400 of us in the country. So I'm in the metro New York area. You're in Northern California, right? They're in these major areas, you can find a good number of specialists not too far away, but there are parts of the country where it may be harder to find a cancer specialist. So I tell owners to go to and veterinarians, you can go to vetspecialist.com and you can find board certified, like where's the closest board certified specialist to you in your area. I think it is really important to develop a really good relationship, with a specialist and the general practitioner, and then work together as a team. And I think that's been the most successful. And and just share the cases and have that good relationship. There are many cases that I consult with the general practitioners in my area that don't come over. The owners may not be interested in a consult, or maybe they just need some questions on what diagnostics to do and what's the best way to work it up. But I think, you want to have a really good relationship, and you just, probably just as when you're looking for a veterinarian, right? It's a little bit of trial and error and trying to find, someone that works, that you're going to work well with.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Now, as far as building your own brand, when did you decide to kind of go out and build your own Dr. Sue Cancer Vet? And what was...
Yeah, I laugh because it was all sort of accidental. So after the book came out, someone said to me, you should probably make a web page, get your own website. So I decided to make a website, and when I was working with a local website designer, he said, he told me about social media. He's like, you should make a page. And I don't even know that I knew that Facebook had pages at that point. And so I, made a Facebook page. I really didn't know what to do with it. The first story that I posted was Bella. It was this golden retriever that I had treated for a subcutaneous hemangiosarcoma. She had radiation, and then the tumor came back, and she finally did an amputation, and we also did chemo. And Mom was in New York City, sent me a picture of Bella at a cafe on the sidewalk in New York City with this beautiful cake. And I said, can I share this on Facebook? And it got a lot of likes and a lot of positive, feedback. People like, tell us about Bella. And that was really where I realized that, people wanted to hear stories. And so, just gradually over time, I just started to, try to share a story. And as I got more traction and more traffic, it just became my thing that almost every day I try to post a story about something that happened in the clinic, or maybe just sometime, something that's happened in my life. But I try to keep it really focused on what I'm seeing in the clinic. And like I mentioned earlier, some posts are not that engaging and some posts are. Sort of the way that I personally look at Facebook is it's free, right? It's only my time. I'm not paying anyone to do it for me, so I can fail on a post or two, and it's not really a big deal. But again, it was just sort of, oh, I should have a Facebook page. Okay, and then just sort of trial and error, figuring out what works and what doesn't work. I also think one of the keys that I have found with Facebook page, and this, is try to keep the posts short. That becomes hard for me when I'm telling about one of my cases, but use very, easy to understand language. You want to educate clients, but you also want it to be something that's relatable and seems approachable to them. I think that's something that if your audience is pet owners, it's really important to talk in a language that they're going to understand and relate to.
Definitely. And I really like your storytelling. And I think practices are not doing that enough. And every day you have interesting stories come through, and you can relate that just like you're doing specifically to procedures or things that they need to look for. So one thing that I wanted to ask you is...
And the other thing...
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say is that a lot of my clients, they love it. Like, it was funny, yesterday I had a really crazy day, and I was finally eating lunch at 4 in the afternoon, and I was, looking through my Dr. Sue Facebook page, and one of my clients who we had already treated and, her first chemotherapy treatment, but she had, posted on my page waiting for Dr. Sue, and, it was, Brutus on the chair in the exam room waiting to see me, and it's fun to see clients like that, or, they're like, oh, I was on Dr. Sue this week, and things like that. So, clients like it, and I think obviously, so every client that comes into my practice signs a media release, and if they don't want to be on it, we obviously don't share their stories. We're, take that. But what I have found is most people are really proud and really excited to be part of the community and share their story and things like that. But there are a few people that don't want to be in it. So that's my other advice is I used to just get verbal consent, when I first started doing it, where it wasn't that regular a thing, but now it's part of my practice. My coordinator goes in, she introduces herself, makes sure we have all the client's information correct, and then she asks them if they want to, if they're okay with the media release. So I think that's another important thing, that if you're going to start, including client stories on your blog or on your Facebook page or anything like that, is to make sure that the owner is comfortable with that. I have found 90% to love it, but again, you don't want to upset a client who didn't want their pet on social media.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So, and just a practical quick question on that. How did you draft up your media release? I know you're not an attorney and you're not going to advise on how to do that, but did you have like an attorney do it? Did you just look it up online, or how would you suggest a practice go about doing that?
So the previous practice that I was at, so I work, they had one designed, that they were already doing it because they were trying to build up the hospital's Facebook page and Instagram and things like that. So they did it, and they're really supportive of me. So they wrote Dr. Sue in it, and then when I switched practice, I'm still working for a VCA clinic. We just transferred the release over to it. Mm-hmm. So you can find them online. It's pretty, it's pretty basic. But for me, I was lucky because the practice already had a media release. We just added, Dr. Sue Cancer Vet. I tell a lot of my clients that I lecture a lot and that I share their stories in the lectures, and they get really excited about that as well. That you're sharing their pet story and helping educate other vets and pet owners and technicians and things like that. So I have found most clients to be really, really excited about it. But again, I was lucky. Mine was in the practice for me, and we just added Dr. Sue to it.
Very cool. So with your Facebook page, I noticed that you've had a hashtag that you've been promoting, which is Why Wait Aspirate, and I think that's really cool. Can you talk about how long you've been promoting that and what you found doing that? Because I think it's super interesting with hashtags, because you can't really own a hashtag. However, you're the only one who does that hashtag because it's very specific to what you do. So how has that gone for you?
Right. So I actually do own the trademark for Why Wait Aspirate, and See Something, Do Something, Why Wait Aspirate. So this is a cancer awareness program that I have been working on for a couple of years, that all came out of one of my head nurse's dogs, Smokey, had a lump. And he had many lipomas over the years, and we had aspirated them all and documented them in his record, and she had found another one, and we got busy. She brought him in one day, and we didn't aspirate it. She brought him back a couple weeks later, and I aspirated it, and it turned out not to be another lipoma. And the dog had over 10 lipomas over the years that I've been taking care of him. And this one turned out to be a low-grade soft tissue sarcoma, so those malignant connective tissue cancers. And he had it removed. It required a really big surgery from our surgeon with some flaps that ended up breaking down, and it was really touch and go. We did get margins. He did heal up fine, but it really hit me hard because here was a dog under my skin. He's a white pitty, really easy to find lumps and bumps, and I got complacent, and I felt if I was getting complacent, something was wrong, that we needed to do something. And so what I realized is that there aren't really good guidelines for lumps and bumps in dogs and cats. And I was also at the same time seeing a bunch of cases that were coming to me with very large tumors that the owners didn't realize something needed to be done, or someone had looked at it and said, that looks benign, or just, keep an eye on it. And no one really knew, if you tell an owner, keep an eye on it, they don't really know what that means. And so they often come back with these softball-sized tumors over their hocks or something like that. So that's where the idea for the program, See Something, Do Something. So the idea is if the mass is the size of a pea and has been there a month, go to your vet and get an aspirate. And so this is now a program that I've joined forces with VCA. We're going to be launching this fall and next year, but it is a campaign to get those lumps and bumps aspirated early at the vet. And I want to educate veterinarians that we can't, I can't look at a mass. You can't look at a mass. We can't feel it and know if it's benign or malignant. We have to collect some cells from it. And then on the flip side, or, in parallel with that, I want to be educating pet owners that if they find a lump or bump and it's the size of a pea, which is a centimeter, and has been there a month, to go to the vet and do the aspirate. I originally called the program See Something, Do Something, but then Why Wait Aspirate came out, and I really love that, and I think, it catches on. I think, both titles have, one tells you what to do, but a lot of owners don't even know what aspirates are. So that's also part of the program, is to educate them that. But so that has become my hashtag. I did go through the trademark process, which was, I don't know if you've done that, but it's a legal process. It took almost a year to get that done. So anyone could obviously use any hashtag, but I did take the extra step to get it trademarked as well, just because I wanted it to be protected with the program. And the program's but for me, this is my passion. Like, I hope that in a couple of years, everybody will look back and be like, yeah, of course, the cat had a lump. It's been there a month. I went to my vet. I got it aspirated, and we got that soft tissue sarcoma off early. And, you know, the cat didn't need any therapy because I found my pet's cancer early. And vets will be happier. Pet owners will be happier. And so I think it's a good program. It's just, it's new. I'm really excited to get it out there.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I was just searching for the hashtag on Facebook, and there's quite a bit of people sharing it. And so it's already generating quite a bit of, recognition on Facebook.
Yeah,
so that's really cool.
Yeah. And I've been lecturing to it for vets since I introduced it. The first meeting was NAVC last year, 2015. As I say, I will talk to any group about it, you know, that will hear me. It's a really good program. I mean, general practitioners love it because it empowers them to tell the owner, which we never had that, you know, that information. Like, this is the right time to do an aspirate. And the cool thing is I have people from Australia and London and, you know, Europe that are saying, I have a lump or bump and my vet won't aspirate. And then I told them that you said so, and now we're doing the aspirate, and we found a mast cell tumor, and we got margins, and thank you so much. And that's the cool part about Facebook and social media and Twitter, is like, I'm reaching people all over the world just by sharing my stories on Facebook. And to me, that is so exciting, and I can't even wait for the program to roll out. So, yeah, I will, you know, it's amazing, the power of social media.
Definitely.
You know, if you figure out how to do it, which again, to me, my best advice is it's trial and error, and if something's resonating, try it again. But again, I think that sometimes you just don't know what's going to stick until you throw it out there.
Definitely. So you mentioned that Facebook was free. It's not free for me because I pay a lot on advertising. Do you do only organic growth on your stuff, or have you done paid marketing as well for your stuff?
I mean, it's free in that I write my own posts, right? So I'm not outsourcing it to someone else. And, you know, that's my time. And as, you know, other people remind me, my time is worth something. But, I mean, I'm doing all the posts myself. I have played a little bit with Facebook ads over the years. I recently have hired somebody to help me with it because, to be honest, I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And so, you know, as I tell my clients, like, I'm an expert in, you know, treating dogs and cats with cancer, but if their pet has diabetes, like, I'm going to need the help of an internist for a complicated case. You know, if their animal has, you know, an arrhythmia, I'm going to get a cardiologist involved. So I like to be the expert on what I am, and then I like to ask for help when I don't know what I'm doing. So I was doing some of my own ads, and they probably weren't that successful. So now I'm using the help of one of the social media experts to see if I can be more successful. So I have recently started to use an expert, but
cool. I think, you know, again, I understand you're a cancer vet.
It's hard though, because yeah, but you know, I mean, it is hard to figure out, like, sometimes I'm like, should I boost this post? How much money do I spend? What audience do I target? It is a little bit overwhelming, and you can, you know, spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. So I do spend money on Facebook, but I try to limit what I'm spending because, again, I'm not really selling anything on Facebook, right? I'm not trying to, a lot of people that are trying to sell maybe an online course or a webinar or a book or anything like that. So I try to not spend that much money on it because the return of investment for me.
Yeah, totally.
But how, can I ask you, how have you, is it trial and error? Are you doing a lot of your own research and trying to figure out the best way to advertise?
Yeah, so with me, I have several other businesses also. So with my podcast, I've created one product that I pre-sold, and that's the only product I've created. Otherwise, it's been all free. But the other businesses that I have, it's just trial and error through actually doing it. But I've had to spend a lot of money to get the understanding of it. So you have to pay for your education some way. Either you got to pay it with your time, or just by trial and error through spend and learn as much as you can each time and measure it. But that's really
and then they
interesting.
change the algorithms
All the time,
right? And then
every single day, ad products, everything changes. So I think that's definitely some good advice. I mean, for most vets, I don't think that, and I would say 95% of vets shouldn't be running their own ads because it's just so complicated. Now, boosts and things like that are different, but it's changing all the time. Like there's 3 new product updates for video ads this week that are really, really cool, but if you don't know how to do it, then you just don't know that it even exists. So it's definitely difficult. But I think the storytelling that you're doing is the part that is so valuable, though, that you can't outsource your knowledge.
Exactly. That's what
the
I
emotion
was going to
that
say.
comes in with that. And that's really where even if you put $100 behind a post, if it's written by a Facebook guy who doesn't know what's going on in your practice, it's not going to work. You might get it out there, but it's just not going to be successful. So I think that what you're doing is
the other
way to do it.
The other thing that I would add, so at the larger practice that I was at for a couple of years, it was a very short stint, but they hired somebody to start doing more of the in-house social media, and her intentions were good, but she was new to veterinary medicine. She had come from another industry, and her posts were very technical, often like, things that sounded like they were coming from a dictionary, and they weren't very authentic and real and things like that. And I think, that's the one thing that the advice that I have is it's really helpful if it's somebody who's involved with the cases or sharing the story, the doctors are sharing the stories or the technicians or things like that, because I think the more real that they are, the more organic they are, the more well received they'll be. That's my experience.
Definitely. I think if you have somebody who's a tech or a practice manager they're in the practice all the time, because oftentimes practice managers are, doctors or techs, and so they know the industry inside and out, and they get to see everything that's going on in the practice. And I think that's probably the best idea. If you're going to have somebody in-house manage it, they need to have a background in it so that they can speak the language and understand all the things that happen, for sure. Well, I think what you're doing is amazing.
I almost
Go ahead.
I was going to say I almost slipped my lid when one of the posts that the person put up said that's usually fatal, and I was like, oh, I was like, I was like, come talk to me before you post anything about cancer that's so negative. It was like completely against like my positive approach towards treating cancer, and she was like, oh, well, I looked it up online, and that's what it said. So again,
that's like just as bad as the client looking it up online and finding the misinformation that's out there from like natural pet health. I'm sure you have to combat that all the time with like, okay, I'm just going to give my dog coconut oil and it's going to cure the cancer, right? That's all you need. Like, you're charging too much. I just need a $2 bottle of coconut oil, or whatever's out there.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're doing an amazing job at your personal brand, and I just thank you so much for coming on. Just to wrap up here, and I need to be respectful of your time for sure, for people in the industry that want to start their own brand, which is something that you've been very successful about, what would you suggest and what would be your best piece of advice for people who want to get started in creating their own personal brand? Because I think there's a lot of value. I mean, if you ever needed a job, you are the cancer vet, you know what I mean? So like it'd be easy for you to get hired. So I think there's, people out there in the job market, especially if the economy goes bad or something, having a personal brand would be very, very valuable. So what would your advice be to somebody for building their personal brand?
One, I think you have to want to do it, right? You have to want to be out there. You have to enjoy interacting with people. Some people just don't love the social interactions and being out there and talking about it. I used to not tell people if we sat on a plane and they'd ask what you do, I'd be like, oh, I'm a vet, but then I would be like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, I'm a cancer vet. Did you know that cancer is really treatable and that most pets tolerate treatment? So I love to do it. So that I think if you're going to have a personal brand, you have to know that you're going to be out there, you're going to be talking about it, and you should love what you do. And so for me, that's the easy part about it. And then the other thing that I think, which I learned, again, by trial and error, because I just did the Facebook page without realizing what I wanted to talk about, but I think having a message. And so for me, my message is cancer is treatable. There's lots of different options, and early detection saves lives. So I think by having your message, keeping it simple, keeping it clear, that will really help define your brand. So I think having a message, keeping it simple, and keeping it focused.
That's great advice. I think that's great advice for practice too. So that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Where's the best place people can find you online? Obviously, we talked about the Facebook page. Where's the best places?
Yep. So you can find me on my website, which is drsuecancervet.com, or on most of the social media platforms, but my main one is really on Facebook, Dr. Sue Cancer Vet. I'm also a little bit on Instagram and on Twitter as well, but Facebook is sort of the main one for me.
All right, wonderful. Well, I'll definitely want to have you back on once the Why Wait Aspirate hashtag becomes as common as like the McDonald's trademark or whatever. You know, everybody knows it in the whole world, so that would be really cool.
Well,
to have
I
you back
hope
on.
so.
Well,
thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great day. All right, I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. It was definitely longer than most interviews. Very interesting. I especially thought the part where she's trademarked the hashtag. Very interesting. I think that's a great idea. And I'm very excited to see what she does. I think that she's going to be very successful at kind of creating a movement around this. And it's just very exciting to see what happens. I'm definitely going to have her back on the podcast again. So if you want to find her, you can find her on Facebook if you search for Dr. Sue the Cancer Vet. And again, if you ever have any questions, comments, need help with anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on next week's episode. Have a fantastic week.